Hi, I'm Carol Gold.
I'm Steve Clark.
And we're here at Above the Fray podcast. Steve, let's talk a little bit about media manipulation, mainly because we're heading into a national election. And I think a whole lot of people don't necessarily understand the extent to which circumstances are being manipulated in order to cause them to think and vote certain ways. So I'd like to start with the now revealed scheduling for the presidential debates. And that would be how interesting that the Democratic convention, the Democratic leadership, I guess it's the DNC, has strongly advocated for and been successful in getting the debates opposite some of the main NFL games in season.
Correct.
So why? Well, because you then tear people. I mean, you got certainly the men in the country and a good percentage of the women who like to watch football in season. You've got them either going back and forth with the debate, right, to watch the game, or not at all, just choosing the game because they don't care. I mean, I think anybody who watches the debate will be watching for the entertainment value only of Trump, of seeing him and seeing how he plays off of her. But other than that, I don't think people, if they have to decide between content and an NFL football game, they're going with the game.
Well, also it's interesting is that Trump's constituents that you would think his main voting bloc are going to be blue collar people who like to watch football. And so they're not going to be tuning in to watch the debate because they'd rather watch the football game. Understandable. The thing that also makes it interesting is that from Hillary's standpoint, it's a way that less people are going to see her. The fact is, if she really had a strong message, if she really was so certain about what she was saying, she'd want to have it in a space, in a time and a space that everybody could watch her. Clearly what she's doing is she's limiting the audience. She's limiting the audience of potential
limiting her exposure.
Exactly, and limiting the amount of potential Trump voters that would watch him and hopefully swing whatever amount of votes her way.
So here's what I think is happening with the media. And again, we talk to you not because we're for Trump, but we're trying to show you the bias that does in the end affect the vote. And that is, if you remember in the primary, the press gave him unlimited. He was in the news every single day. He didn't have to pay for advertising.
Because he was working them.
Okay, he was working them, but they were willing participants. They're still covering him, but something has changed.
Yeah.
And that is, now they're covering him antagonistically. Now they're looking for everything he's doing wrong, jumping on it, and playing it out for as long as they can. So they helped him win the primary. And now they're going to try to help him lose the general. Because they are pretty much, for the most part, with very few exceptions, advocates for the Democratic agenda in this country, for the liberal agenda in this country. And so they are front people, in essence. Instead of being independent journalists, they're front people for the Democratic agenda. So I think, number one, people should be aware of the difference in the coverage on Trump now, and how now you're being fed on a daily basis what a bad guy he was. His wife did nude photos with and by the way, they had these photos back when they released the first photos of her. They held on to these photos. This is Rupert Murdoch, who has no love for Trump. He held on to these photos for now, because they wanted to do the most damage, and that's why they held on to them now. They're also holding on to CBS purchased a British documentary that's been done on him by a female reporter that I understand is scathing in its conclusions and in what she was able to document in terms of him and also his relationship to her, meaning how he treated her both before, during, and after the interview when he was dissatisfied with the outcome of the documentary. So they're little by little trying to manipulate the public against him. And the thing I think we want to call to our listeners' attention, our viewers' attention, Steve, remember during the Democratic 2008 and 2008, there was some talk, and verified that the DNC used behavioral psychologists in their marketing of Obama. They're doing it again. They're using behavioral psychologists. That's why the whole Democratic convention was all about the heart. It wasn't about policy and agenda. It was about appealing to your heart, having people come on who had lost children, and appealing to your patriotism, and appealing to your constitutional preference, when in fact all of those are Tea Party values. And the DNC condemned the Tea Party till they crushed the Tea Party, and now they've stolen their message, and the press is a willing participant in this deliberate manipulation.
Yeah. Part of the problem, for example, getting back to the photos of Melania, I find it interesting because the paper that released it was a New York Post, and as being a former New Yorker, it's actually one of the more conservative newspapers in New York. If actually, it's the only conservative newspaper in New York. They didn't run it for 1 day. They ran it for 2 days with a variety of different photos. And if you read the Post for any length of time, you realize it was an unusual way that they released the photos. Right. So it gets back to your point that there was a deliberate attempt to begin to start affecting the voters going forward. I think it was done intentionally and with malice. And I think, unfortunately, going forward, that's what Trump is going to encounter. It's not going to be a fair election. He's going to have to reach out to the voters, and the second hurdle, he's going to have to reach out above and over the media to get his message across.
So I want to qualify, because it oftentimes seems as if we're advocating for him.
Right.
And you and I go round and round on this, and I know you're probably closer to voting for him than I am.
Yeah.
I'm left without a candidate. I mean, I don't want anyone to misunderstand. When I talk about the manipulation of the Democratic Party and the conspiracy, or the complicity rather, of the media, I don't talk about it because I'm trying to sway anybody toward Trump.
Right, I agree.
I'm talking about it because it's so not apparent, apparently, to so many Americans that they're being, sheepled. I call them sheeples.
They are.
They're being shepherded like sheep to believe a certain mindset, and it's very deliberate, and it's being done with behavioral psychologists to move them. And what's scary to me is the lack of concern that people have about it going on. I think when Hillary Clinton said after Benghazi, "What difference does it make?" she was really speaking for a great majority of this country, which doesn't care anymore what the truth is.
Right.
It's disturbing to those of us who do.
Well, one of the Clintons' famous tactics that they've always employed is that they're consummate professional in terms of being able to weather a storm.
Yeah.
And so what they do is that a scandal hits, and they fight and they fight and they fight, and to the point where the story gets so old, and then when they get hit with the story again, they revisit, and their attitude and their response is like, "Oh my God, you're bringing up that story. That story is so old. It's been debunked.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
Monica Lewinsky and all the women.
It's been debunked. Everybody has debunked the story, has read about it, knows it's a fraud, and you continue to bring it up." And that's the problem with the media. And the reality is, A, the story was never debunked, and B, it wasn't a dead story. It's just how the Clintons are able to frame the conversation and get people off the story.
Well, he was a lawyer disbarred by the House of Representatives while he was in office.
Right.
Okay? I'm an attorney. Disbarment is a shameful thing in the legal profession. It means you've done something really bad. He lied under oath, so he was disbarred. And yet he's loved, he's beloved, and we're willing to put him back into a co-presidency, because as long as he's alive, that's what it will be, a co-presidency. We're willing to do that because, again, what difference does it make whether he tells the truth or not, whether he can put his hand on a Bible and lie or not, whether as a lawyer bound by the oath of a canon of ethics, it matters whether he lies or not. It doesn't to the American public. And the Clintons know this. So like you said, they run a story out. Recently, Anita Broderick, who was raped not once but twice by Bill Clinton, and held on to the knowledge of the information about the second rape until recently, although it's been verified also through who she talked to right after it happened, or contemporaneous, kind of like it's considered under law like a declaration that happens when you're still in a state of mind
right.
from the excitement or the event. people don't care. It's like, oh, it's the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, it's so old. But it does matter because there's a plethora of women who, like with Bill Cosby, whose stories are all consistent about the guy's behavior. When the DNC puts the Khan, I forget his first name, but the Muslim who spoke at the DNC who lost his son.
Right.
What they don't tell you is that he works for a law firm who does Hillary Clinton's taxes, did it for years, who was involved in her re-election, in her election campaign back in 08. So we're trying to keep you focused on, please, 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 do not just listen to the headlines. Do not just read the paper or the website you're used to reading. Go deep, go wide, and question what's going on. Even read opposition stuff, because in that you will find kernels of truth. And then we have the confidence in you to believe you can make up your own mind if you're informed. So I'm Carol Gold.
I'm Steve Clark.
And this has been Above the Fray podcast. Like us on YouTube.
Thanks.
Have a great week. Bye.